Well, good morning. My name is Bryan Yackulic, and for the past several years, I've had the opportunity to work with different managers and leaders in a variety of organizations on the topic of millennials. Not an easy topic to address, because even bringing up the word millennials brings about a lot of strong and passionate opinions. Some of them good, most of them, not surprisingly, are not. But something that becomes very clear when working with these groups is that although this is not a new topic, we've actually been talking about millennials in the workplace pretty extensively over the past decade or so. It's something we still do not get right. We now have three primary generations in the workplace: the baby boomers, Generation X, and the millennials. That's three different groups of people with three very different upbringings, three different lifestyles, three different life events, and as a result, three very different perspectives on the workplace. Now, all of that should provide a great opportunity for diversity of thought, knowledge, skills, and ideas. But all too often, as we've seen, it results in generational tension, generational frustration, and it's something that could absolutely ruin an organization or a team. And although this is not a new topic, it's never been more relevant than it is right now. Because in 2015, millennials took over as the largest working group, bigger than any other generation in the workplace. And by 2020, we will make up over half of the entire workforce. We are not going anywhere. We need to find ways to begin to address the issue. But I do want to go back to the word millennial for a second. At this point, it's basically used as an insult. Even millennials, we don't want to identify with being a millennial because of all the negative stereotypes and connotations surrounding the word. When you think about how millennials are portrayed on social media, in articles, on television, not a very pretty picture. They're lazy, entitled, narcissistic, addicted to their phones. They want a trophy for everything that they do. They've been in the workplace for 2 minutes and they already want a promotion. They are offended by absolutely everything, and they're killing off everything we've ever loved, like Applebee's. Basically, they are the worst generation ever. Well, Time magazine, in an article written in July, talked about the current generation. As I talk about what Time magazine had to say, I want you to think about your own perspective on millennials and whether you agree or disagree with what was said. Here's what Time magazine said. They struggle to make decisions. They would rather be hiking in the Himalayas than climbing the corporate ladder. Companies feel they must cater to a young workforce who's oversensitive at best and lazy at worst. They crave entertainment, but their attention span is as short as one zip on a TV dial. They don't want to pay their dues, and they have a reluctance to embrace the dying work ethic of the former generation. Again, not a very pretty picture, but based on everything we've seen and heard about millennials, I don't think anything on this list is surprising to see. However, this article was written and found in Time magazine in July of 1990. Millennials are roughly born between 1982 and 1998. The absolute oldest millennial at the time this was written was maybe 8 years old. Was this written about millennials? No. This was written about Generation X coming into the workplace, and if you fast forward to 2018, the exact same things are being said about millennials. Pretty interesting. And there's one more quote I want to share with you. This one's a little bit older. You could tell from some of the language used. I actually revised some of the quote to make it more relatable. But as I read through this quote, just try and guess what year you think this was written. Here's the quote. Our youth now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for their elders and love chatter in place of exercise. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up their food, and tyrannize their teachers. Now, I've had the opportunity to present this quote to a variety of different groups, a variety of different generations. And almost no matter who you ask when I say, what year do you think this was written? The most common response I'll get is maybe 1980, maybe 1970. This quote is so old that there is controversy over the origins of the quote. Researchers can't seem to agree. Some think it's from the 1940s, some think it's from the early 1900s, and some even attribute it all the way back to Socrates. Yes, that's Socrates. We're talking BC here. Regardless of the actual origin of the quote, it is much, much older than millennials. This is not a millennial-specific issue. Generational tension has been around literally since we've even had generations. It was there for the baby boomers when they entered the workplace. where they were seen as so narcissistic and all about themselves that they're the original me generation. They were seen as being rebels and the hippies. Basically, they were the worst generation ever. It was there for Generation X when they entered the workplace. We talked about the Time magazine article, but on top of that, Generation X was seen as so lazy. You can't get them to do absolutely anything. They were so lazy, a new term had to be invented for how lazy they were, and they are the original slackers. They were the worst generation ever. And as we transition to millennials, we are seeing those same negative stereotypes get repeated. However, generational tension and conflict has been taken to the next level. We're at a near hostile point where both sides, the older and the younger generations, are so frustrated with one another and say, we can't work with them because they're so much different than ourselves and they are wrong about everything. In fact, if you were to Google millennials suck, you would find 486,000 search results. It is not a healthy environment. So if generational tension has been around forever, why then are millennials facing even increased levels of generational tension? What makes this group so different than any generation to come before them? How familiar is this picture to all of you? Not only do we have somebody on their tablet and their smartphone watching television, the other person's on their phone and watching TV. These are millennials, quote unquote, socializing. And you may be asking me, well, Bryan, how in the world did you find such a stereotypical picture of the millennial generation? These are my old roommates. I took this picture. I'd walk in on this every night when I came home from work. And in fact, if I hadn't been the one taking the picture, we had a third couch on the left, you would see me lying down on my phone and watching TV. It is a different generation. And Pew Research Group calls millennials digital natives, meaning they're the only generation that has not had to adapt to new technology. It's been ingrained in us. And that could be a tremendous asset to the workplace. We're talking about a new set of skills and abilities and knowledge all circling around technology. And millennials are saying we are doing so much more with so much less. We're doing things faster. We're connecting not just around the country, but all around the globe. And when you look at factors like race, religion, orientation, or gender, millennials tend to be much more open and more welcoming to different groups of people because of that greater connectivity. On top of that, the workplace has changed because of technology. For the baby boomers, they are the workaholics. You're in the office 24/7. Generation X, they like having a work-life balance. And for millennials, now it's transformed into a work-life blend. You're never 100% at work because of things like social media, the internet, and texting, but you're never 100% away from it either. Millennials are much more likely to be working while on vacation. They're more likely to respond to an email after 11 o'clock at night. So millennials look at the technology piece and are saying, it is absolutely great. But the older generations are saying, there's some benefits there, but it's become a distraction in the workplace. And unfortunately, it's something that has further alienated millennials from the other generations. And that's why we're seeing even increased levels of generational tension. Listen, the conversation has to change from everything that's wrong with a certain generation to how do we take advantage of the differences. The organizations that take advantage and benefit from the differences in the workplace will thrive, and the organizations that refuse to adapt will struggle in the future. But the conversation has to come back to understanding, because in the absence of understanding, we get bias and we get blame. And when we have bias and blame, we get articles like the following, and I promise you these are all real. 2016 Rio Olympics aftermath. NBC blames millennials for low ratings. Time magazine, the me generation. Millennials are lazy, entitled narcissists who still live with their parents. That is the meanest thing I've ever read about my own generation. Don't take enough vacation, blame millennials, says study. Millennials are killing the napkin industry. Blame millennials for the vanishing bar of soap. My personal favorite as a sports fan, Phoenix Suns owner says his team sucks because of millennial culture, even though every team in the league consists of millennials. It's a pretty weak excuse. And the big article from last year, Millionaire to Millennials, stop buying avocado toast if you want to buy a home, implying that millennials are so crazy about their avocado toast, they buy so much of it, they will never be able to save up for a house. These articles are very humorous. The titles make for some great clickbait, but those feelings are real. There's a lot of blame, a lot of bias, and a lot of venom there. We're simply taking whatever the problem is, not actually addressing the issue, just applying it to every person from a single generation. Not a very effective strategy. The conversation, again, has to come back to how do we better work with one another. Millennials have already changed the workplace in so many positive and impactful ways, and will continue to do so in the years ahead. To simply dismiss an entire generation, their thoughts, ideas, and accomplishments just for being younger is an absolute mistake. And on the flip side, as millennials, we have so much to learn from the older generations. They've been in the workplace the longest. They know why things have been done a certain way over time, why things have been successful, and why things have failed. And if we're going to be successful, we need to be learning from them as well. Author Brad Karsh sums this up best by saying the following: no generation is better or worse, just different. And in just a couple of years, Generation Z will be entering the workplace. That's right, millennials, we are getting old. But in just a couple of years, Generation Z will be entering the workplace, and they will be the next group to completely change the game. Change is the only constant in life, and innovation requires disruption. And I mean this in the most positive way possible. Generation Z are going to be tremendous disruptors, and they're already doing a great job of doing so. It is our responsibility to make sure that we're giving this very motivated and optimistic and enthusiastic group a fair shot, so we prevent ourselves from making the same mistakes that have been made with millennials and every generation to come before them. And if we could do that with Generation Z, then maybe, just maybe, we could prevent them from becoming just the next worst generation. Thank you.